I started the show in 2010 when I was working at Starbucks, and I knew from the very beginning that I was never ever going to get anybody to casually listen to this show. Okay. I knew from the very beginning that if anybody was actually going to listen to my podcast, they were going to be a diehard listener. That's just this kind of show. It's a show where if you don't get the joke, you're not gonna stay for longer than about 3 minutes to discover what that joke is. But if you can get past like 3 minutes or something like that, you get it. Okay. Not to sound too grandiose, but my show, The Midnight Citizen, is it's of course it's like a monologue format, which podcast that's not too popular for podcasts. Okay. Most podcasts are like people interviewing guests, or it's like two friends or two or more friends talking about like horror movies or their favorite record albums or something incredibly niche like cooking pasta or something like that. Model trains. And this is what all the advice gives you. If you're going to start a podcast, go to YouTube and just say, Google how to start a podcast there on YouTube. And you'll come up with all these videos of these people in like incredibly nicely lit studios with great microphones telling you that the number one rule of creating a podcast is that you have to find your niche. You have to like look at something that nobody else in the world is talking about and do a podcast about that thing. And then you will find a very large audience that previously was like a silent majority. And I agree with this advice if you're going to make a podcast that you want everybody to listen to, okay? But I can't do that. I can't create a podcast that is incredibly niche. But the weird thing is I was thinking about it this week. That's exactly what I did. Very few people out there right now are doing podcasts where they just talk about everything. So it's ironic because I have a very broad show in that I cover a wide range of topics. But not many shows out there do that, so that in turn makes me very niche. The show, The Midnight Citizen, I wanted to do it after I was just inspired by listening to hundreds of hours of the radio legend Gene Shepard's old shows, where he would just come on at night and talk into a microphone about whatever was on his mind. I love that so much, and of course, naturally, that's something that radio phased out over many years, unless you were like a conservative talk radio show host like Rush Limbaugh or somebody like that, and you came on and talked about politics. It's not something that exists on radio anymore at all and hasn't for some time. And certainly it's not something that podcasters want to do. Just come on and talk about whatever's on their mind because they don't think that there's an audience out there who cares about what's on their mind unless what's on their mind is something that has to do with like a hobby or whatever. So I know that I put a lot of work into doing this show, and I really try very hard to make it look easy, but it's not. It's a lot of work, and that's one of the reasons why I don't do this show. I haven't done the show very often in the last 4 years because I do have a day job and it requires a lot of my time and energy. I'm a teacher. And so recently I decided to just like give it a shot, like teach and podcast at the same time. And this is my 4th week of trying this out. And I found that I can actually find a balance between my job and this show. It's a very delicate balance, though. Okay, it's very, very difficult to find it, and everything every week kind of has to be zen and fall into the exact right place in order for this to happen the way that I want it to happen. So I guess what I'm talking about is that it's very hard work, but I feel that it's worth it. I feel that it's worth it. And one thing that I just can't get over is, as difficult as this show is to do, I seem to be content every week with the fact that very few people are going to listen to it. And so I guess at the end of the day, I'm just doing it for myself, right? And I know that some people do listen to it. But what I have been really trying to do the last few weeks that I've been coming back and doing Midnight Citizen shows is I've been trying to find ways to promote this show in a way that will actually find an audience. Because I know that they're out there. And I had this revelation this week that there is an audience out there for stuff like my show that you can just put on in the background. Like that's kind of what I'm hoping that you're doing right now. I'm hoping right now that I'm on mute. If you're watching me on YouTube, you've got me on mute or you've got me turned down very low. And you're watching me just talk occasionally while you're baking cookies or something like that. You're doing something. I don't know. Or if you're listening to me on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever, maybe you've got me turned down low while you're like going to sleep or something. You're doing homework or whatever. I don't know. It's just some mundane thing. I'm totally okay with that. I don't need to be heard right now. I don't need, what I'm doing, what I'm talking about right now can just go completely over your head. It can just be background noise. I had this revelation that there is a market for this week because I came in and my wife wakes up every single morning. She pours herself a cup of coffee and she sits down and she watches these ASMR videos, like people just ironing clothes or feeding birds or something like that. Just videos that really have no express purpose but to just be on. And I realized that like that, there I am right there. That's exactly what I do. That's my niche. So I know that there's an audience out there for that. I've got to find them and they've got to know about it. But I don't think that there are that many podcasts out there right now that are specifically geared toward the ASMR fans. Right? But I don't know. I've been looking at just other ways to promote lately. I've been hitting up Reddit quite a bit, trying to like build a community on Reddit, talking to people about podcasts. Everybody there just has this idea that every podcast has to have a sponsor, every podcast has to have a guest, somebody like that. It's become just this. I feel like this incredibly polluted group of content producers who just think that something always has to be something. And the reason that I got into podcasting in the first place is like I just thought it was a great place to experiment, to try new things every single week, to never actually have to make something about anything. Okay. But still, I'm just kind of seeing like maybe I can actually take this formula of promoting podcasts and making them popular and doing other things. There's this idea of like SEO, search engine optimization. All these YouTube channels and all these podcasters who talk about podcasting and try to sell their services to podcasters talk about search engine optimization. Make sure that Google knows where you are. So I looked on the internet this week, and I just kind of tried to see like what are some of those like popular terms, okay, to search on Google, and maybe I can like name my show, The Midnight Citizen, something that actually comes up in Google because the title of the podcast or the episode itself actually has, words in common with popularly searched words on Google. So I'm thinking like just calling my podcast Facebook, or maybe calling it YouTube, or maybe like the Facebook of YouTube or something like that. Or calling it like Midnight XXX or the Porno Citizen. Or then there's like something like, I don't know, porno. I've got porno, something catchy that gets eyes on my show. And then, of course, ears. That'd be nice.